Good morning, Mercy. I'm so glad to be here to speak with you guys. To introduce myself a little bit more than just Max. My full name is Maxim Bokshri. Don't call me that, though. Call me Max. And here at Mercy, I have the honor and joy of leading our teens ministry. So that Christmas party on the 19th, the Wonderland, that's me and my team, and it's so exciting. It's so fun, right? But today, I have the honor of talking with you guys instead of teens, and I'm really excited to do so. So if you guys would, we're just going to jump straight in, open your Bibles to Matthew 22. This is going to be our main area of focus, and we're going to be reading from verse 34, the Great Commandment, as Eugene said. And the question we're going to seek to answer by reading today is, to what extent are we commanded to love God? Now, based on the title of the section, the greatest commandment, and the question, and it says it on the screen, right? We can assume what the great commandment is, right? Love God. But knowing we are supposed to love God and knowing to what extent we're to love God are two completely different things. If you ask a kid if they like ice cream or if they love ice cream, they're going to respond with yes. Most of them do, at least. And if you ask them how much they love ice cream, they're going to respond with something like this: I love ice cream this much. What they're doing is they're comparing love, which is intangible, to the distance between their hands, which is tangible. But it still gives an unclear answer. But Jesus gives us a clear answer. So if you all, I'm going to start reading. But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. And one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And he said to them, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. So to set the scene a bit, Jesus, for the past chapter and a half, has been being tested and tempted by the religious leaders to slip up. They're trying to catch him in a contradiction, and that's what leads us to this question. And it's in verse 37, Jesus' response, that we're going to be spending most of our time. But the issue we run into when trying to answer our question from the beginning is, like I said, love is not tangible. As a concept, it's not really quantifiable. It's easy to say, I love you, Lord. It's very easy to say, I love Jesus. But when we're asked how much or to what extent, that's where it gets a little foggy, a little tricky. And that's why Jesus gives us three aspects of our being, three parts of us: our heart, our soul, and our mind. Three ways that we can see the actions that are influenced by love. Because although love itself is not visible, its effects are. So we're going to start with the heart, the first one Jesus mentions. What does it look to love Jesus with our heart? Well, let's first define what the heart is. Because obviously Jesus is not referring to the organ beating in my chest, right? There's not one direct definition. Different scholars kind of say different things. But for the most part, they're in agreement on one thing. That the heart, especially during Jesus' days, is our desires and parts of our morality. Aspects of our person which cannot always be defined with logic. It's our emotions. When Jesus asks us to love him with all our heart, he's asking us to have all of our desires and our emotions stem out of love for him. And when we look at the definition of emotion, right, it's a natural, instinctive state of mind deriving from one's circumstances, mood, or relationship with others. You see, our relationship with God, when it grows, our instinctive state of mind changes. Or to put it more easily and in a kind of a better way, our hearts change. We read in Ezekiel 36 that our hearts are changed from stone into flesh. We begin to see people and the world around us differently. We see it as God's creation, something that we are to love, something that we are to steward. Our emotions and natural reactions will begin to change. We begin to feel compassion for the broken. We seek kindness instead of anger when we are wronged. Our emotions and our natural responses are going to change. As we grow in love for God, they'll change around us in a way that shows God's love to the people and world around us. And this is how we are to love God with our hearts. Now, on to the second part of our being. How do we love God with our soul? Well, just like the heart, there's lots of ways to define the soul, but I believe here Jesus is referring to our identity, our character, who we are as a person. And when I think of loving God with our soul, I think of what Paul wrote in Ephesians 5:15-17. It reads, "Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is." As I mentioned previously, once we know the Lord, we begin to change. We are made new in His light. And in all of our character, we begin to seek the Lord out. To love the Lord our God with our soul, we are to have our identity and character reflect the will of the Lord. And the will of the Lord has already been made clear to us. Paul gives us an example in verse 15 and 16. We're to walk wisely and use our time to honor God. And there's countless examples all over the New Testament and Old Testament, all over the Bible, right? We're not going to get into them now. I don't have enough time, but I would love to. But in regards to loving the Lord with our soul, our character and our identity should reflect this, that we should seek to follow the Lord's will to the best of our ability. And of course, we will fall short. By nature, we are imperfect humans. But Jesus is not asking us for a perfect love. He's asking for us to love with everything we have. And finally, we come to the third aspect of our being, our minds. What does it look like to love God with our minds? By far, this is the most easily applied out of the three, because in this context, mind refers to our conscious decisions and logical determination. When we are about to make a decision, about to take action, do we do it on the basis that this is for God, or do we do it on the basis that this is for me? When we get a paycheck at the end of the week, are we thinking of where are we going to go and go out to dinner? How are we going to spend this? What can I buy for myself? Or am I thinking of how can I use this money for God? Now, of course, it applies to more than just money. Money is kind of an easy example. It's a low-hanging fruit, right? But this applies even to the menial tasks of our days, every single part of it. Are we consciously looking to glorify God in all that we do? This is what I mean. This is what I believe it means to love God with our minds, that we are striving to honor Him with our thoughts and decisions before we take action. What we see after all this, because we've covered, there are three aspects, right? That all bases are covered. There's no part of our being left that I can describe. The heart, the soul, the mind are what make me up. It's what makes up Maxim Bokshri. And in these three aspects, we can find avenues to love God, and we can go on and on for hours trying to define them, getting the right definitions, thinking of examples, right? But that still doesn't answer our question of to what extent are we commanded to love God? And that's because the point Jesus is making here is that if we take our heart, we take our soul, and we take our mind, and with all of these, we love God, what part of us is missing? There's no piece of us missing now to love God. To answer our question from the beginning, to what extent? The answer is pretty simple. It's to the furthest extent. So far that none of our being does not love God. About a week or so ago, I watched a YouTube video of a guy making an apple pie out of apples. And obviously you guys think, right, of course you make an apple pie out of apples. That's what, it's in the name. But he made the apple pie only out of apples. No water, no sweetener, no crust, no nothing. All of it was apples. Instead of a sweetener, he used applesauce, concentrated applesauce. Instead of water, he used apple juice. Instead of the crust, he used like an evaporated, dehydrated apple. I'm not a food scientist, I don't get it, but he did it. But the bottom line is every part of this pie was made of an apple, fully apple. In the same way, Nothing in us should not love God. Every single part of us should be devoted to loving him. We are commanded to love God to the point where nothing in our being is exempt from loving him. And if we're to be asked how much, we don't need to respond like a little kid, this much. Our response would be so much so that there's not an atom in my being that does not love God. However, this kind of love is unnatural to us. It's not something we can find in the world naturally. This kind of love is a supernatural love that is only found in love of Jesus Christ and his love for us. You see, when Jesus was given this commandment originally, he's quoting Moses in Deuteronomy 6. And it's in verse 5 we read, when Moses originally gave this commandment, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might." And that's the 5th verse in the chapter. For the rest of the chapter, and it's Deuteronomy, Old Testament, long chapters, right? But for the rest of the chapter, all Moses talks about is how much God loved the Israelites and what he has done for them already. How God brought them out of Egypt out of his love. How God provided for them as they wandered through the desert for 40 years. And how God kept his promise and brought them to the promised land. This God whom Moses writes about, who loved the Israelites back then, is the same God today who loves us just the same. Our Father who is in heaven loved us so much that he sent his one and only Son to be crucified so that we may be saved and we get to know him personally. And when we love God, it's not a surprise to him. We don't suddenly appear in his vision. It's not as if there's a mystical veil hiding us from God, and when we love him, the veil is opened. No, God knew us first. From the beginning of creation, we were known by him. And we had this opportunity to love him because he first loved us. This type of love, like I mentioned earlier, is nothing natural. It's born out of the relationship between God and us. And it's only through this relationship and out of his love for us that we get this opportunity to love him. So let us seek the Lord first, because he's already made himself known to us, and he already loves us. Once we know and understand this, then we can begin to develop and grow in a love to where none of our being is exempt. Mercy Church, that is all I have for you guys today regarding the first commandment. Thank you all for your time, for listening to me. If you would all please welcome Gabe to the stage as he teaches us about the second greatest commandment, love your neighbor.